Have you ever wondered what truly happens when you grow older, and what kind of care is best for your future? Is it living with your children, moving into a retirement community, or finding a way to remain independent? If you are facing the reality of aging, you may find yourself asking these tough questions. The truth is, there isn't one right answer that fits everyone. As we grow older, we all have different needs, desires, and circumstances. But today, I want to share with you the deeply personal stories of 3 older Americans who have navigated these very choices in different, yet surprisingly relatable, ways. In this video, you will hear the first-hand experiences of George, Tom, and Linda, 3 individuals who have faced their unique challenges as they've aged. From overcoming the struggles of relying on family for care, to exploring new forms of elderly assistance, these stories offer real-life solutions that might just change the way you think about getting older. You'll gain valuable insights into the importance of maintaining your independence, and how seemingly small decisions can make a big difference in leading a happier and healthier life as you grow older. But it's not just about the physical aspects of care. It's also about the emotional and mental health that comes with aging. These stories will offer you practical lessons on how to avoid isolation, how to care for yourself without becoming a burden to others, and most importantly, how to maintain your dignity as you age. As you watch this video to the end, you will be equipped with practical advice that could help you or a loved one navigate the challenges of aging with more confidence, grace, and empowerment. Don't miss these heartfelt and insightful stories that may inspire you to take charge of your own life and redefine what it truly means to grow old with grace and purpose. If you enjoy the topic of this video, please comment 1 below to let me know. If you think there's room for improvement, please comment 0 so I can make better videos for you. If you're not yet subscribed, I encourage you to subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. Your support means a lot, and if you found this video helpful, please share it with others so we can continue spreading these valuable lessons. Let's get started. 1. Grandpa's experience. My name is George, and I'm 75 years old. Over the years, I've experienced both living in a nursing home and hiring a caregiver. Unfortunately, both options turned out to be quite costly and not always the right fit, especially for people like me who don't have a large pension to rely on. It's hard to talk about aging, but I want to share my experience to shed light on some of the choices we face as we get older. It's been more than 5 years since my wife passed away, and I've had to navigate life on my own since then. After her death, I hired a caregiver, but after only 2 months, I made the difficult decision to let her go. My children were concerned about me living alone and not taking care of myself, so they arranged for a caregiver to assist me. The cost was around $50 per day, which covered her lodging and meals. She was about 40 years old, from a rural area, and she seemed like a good person. But the reality of having someone help me didn't go as I had hoped. The food she made for me was awful, and she would spend more time on her phone or watching TV than actually helping me. When I needed her attention, I found myself having to call her several times, and she would often ignore me. It was as though I was paying someone to take care of me, but I was the one taking care of her instead. After a few weeks of this, I decided to stop the arrangement. I thought that if I was going to be paying for help, I might as well just buy my groceries and cook for myself. I don't think it made sense to continue paying for a service that wasn't meeting my needs. I let my children know that I wanted to find a different way to manage things, and they understood. A few months later, my children found a spot for me in a nursing home. They were worried about me being alone, and I can see why they thought that was the best option. The truth is, I didn't want to go. At first, I tried to be open-minded, but I just couldn't adjust to the atmosphere. Today's nursing homes are much better than they used to be, with comfortable accommodations and even social activities, but I found the strict rules hard to handle. You have to check in and out every time you leave the building or return. For someone like me who values my freedom, that kind of control didn't sit well with me. Plus, the environment can be a bit depressing. There's a certain atmosphere when you're surrounded by people who are nearing the end of their lives. It didn't take even a month before I made up my mind and decided to leave. As much as I love my family, I realized that living in a nursing home was not for me. I felt like if I could still take care of myself, I shouldn't have to go to a place like that, especially when I value my independence so much. After that, my children suggested that I could stay with each of them for a while. They were doing it out of concern, wanting to be there for me, but I have to admit, I felt a little overwhelmed by the idea. I stayed with them for a while, but never longer than 2 weeks at a time. Let me tell you about my son's place. He and his wife both work during the day, so they're rarely home. When I arrived, my daughter-in-law would leave lunch for me in the fridge before she left. They did what they could, but I always felt like I was in the way. By the time they came home from work, they had their responsibilities, like cooking and cleaning, and I didn't want to add more stress to their lives. I spent most of my time alone during the day, and I didn't know many of the neighbors, so I felt isolated. It wasn't like being in my own home, where I could do things on my terms. Despite how respectful and kind my son and daughter-in-law were, I also noticed that as I got older, there was a subtle shift in how they treated me. For example, the utensils I used in their house were designated just for me, different from those they used. At my daughter-in-law's home, she didn't want me to use the washing machine because she didn't like the scent of my clothes. I prefer to hand wash my clothes, but she wouldn't let me. Instead, I had to go down to the laundry room or find another place to wash them. It made me feel uncomfortable, and no matter how much they tried to be kind, it still didn't feel like home. Now, let me share a bit about my daughter's home. I never intended for her to take care of me in my old age. Of course, when I visit, she and her husband are always very kind to me, but I also know that my son-in-law has his parents to look after. Over the years, I've been able to help out with the kids and support them, but I know that my daughter's family has had their struggles, and it's never felt right to expect them to take on more. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. So, after living with both my son and daughter for short periods, I've come to realize something important. As you age, it's crucial to trust yourself and your ability to care for yourself. It's great that my children want to help, but I don't want to be a burden. I've learned to cook for myself and even picked up new hobbies like Tai Chi every morning. I go to the park with some of my friends, most of whom are also elderly, and we practice Tai Chi together. It's been a great way for me to stay healthy and connected. I also joined a group of elderly people in my community who look out for each other. There are more than 10 of us, and we've created a system where we help one another if anyone is feeling sick or needs something. Whether it's helping with groceries or simply checking in to make sure everyone is okay, it's a form of self-care and companionship that's meaningful to me. I don't need a nursing home or full-time caregiver. What I need is a sense of community and the ability to stay independent. That's been the key to my happiness as I age. As we age, it becomes even more important to be aware of our circumstances. Over the years since my wife passed away, I've come to realize an essential truth. As you grow older, you have to trust yourself. As long as I can care for myself, there's no reason I need to go anywhere. My home is where I feel the most comfortable, and I've learned to appreciate the independence it offers me. I've even picked up new skills, such as cooking, sautéing, and making steamed bread. I've also taken up Tai Chi, which I practice every morning with a wonderful group of elderly people in the plaza. Maintaining my health and having a positive outlook on life are the most important things for me. Last year, along with a group of other elderly individuals I practiced Tai Chi with, we created a new form of self-care where we support each other. We all share the common experience of being older without a partner or children nearby. Together, we've formed a support network that has grown to nearly 20 members. We even started a group on WeChat for lonely elderly people who need a connection. The purpose of our group is simple. When you're older and don't have family close by, it becomes crucial to have someone to turn to when you're not feeling well or need assistance. Many of us prefer not to live in a nursing home or hire a caregiver, especially since most of us don't have a large pension. So, we've come together to look out for one another in this stage of life. In recent years, I've heard of too many elderly people who live alone and pass away without anyone noticing until days later. That's why we decided to form this group. We check in on each other every morning. If someone doesn't respond, we follow up to make sure everything is okay. We live in the same neighborhood or close by, so it's easy to support one another. Over time, our group has become a safe space for all of us. If someone gets sick and needs help, like preparing a meal or going to the hospital, we can always count on each other. It's not always free. We've set up a fare system where we compensate each other at a rate of $20 per hour. For example, the last time I was feeling unwell and needed to visit the hospital, I let the group know, and one of my friends, John, came to accompany me. He helped me with consultations for 3 days, working 8 hours each day. For his help, I paid him $240, which we all agreed on. Everyone in the group is happy with this arrangement. Not only do we get the help we need, but we also earn a little extra income. Sometimes, one of us helps another, and the favor is returned later on. This system is fair and balanced, and because we all understand what it's like to be older, it's easier to trust one another. It's much more affordable than hiring a full-time caregiver or moving into a nursing home. Perhaps the most important aspect of this group is that we all know and trust each other. It gives our children peace of mind, too. Sometimes we go on outings together or just walk in the park, which is always enjoyable. The way we care for one another has grown from a small group to dozens of people, with many other elderly individuals joining us. Not only does this reduce the burden on our children, but it also provides emotional support for us. Every day, someone is checking in, talking to us, and making sure we're doing okay. And if we fall ill, we don't have to fear being alone. What's more, it's incredibly affordable. For just a few $100s a month, we can receive the help we need from each other. This arrangement is much more budget-friendly than hiring a caregiver or moving into a nursing home. I believe this model can work for many elderly people who are still capable of taking care of themselves. By coming together, we support each other in old age, not only helping one another out but also earning some money in the process. 2. Uncle Lay. My name is Tom, and I'm 65 years old. My children are well educated and have established their own successful lives, but I've made a personal choice to live independently. Like many older adults, once retirement comes, the typical options are either to move in with your children or to settle into a retirement community. For me, both of these alternatives feel like the wrong choice. I've decided to live a lifestyle that suits my needs, and it allows me to enjoy my life in comfort. It's been more than 2 years since my wife passed away, and since then, many of my friends and acquaintances have suggested that I start looking for a new partner. But I don't see it that way. I'm someone who values peace, and I've grown to appreciate my own company. After my wife's death, I learned how to be content on my own. If anyone were to ask me to find a new partner, it would make me feel uncomfortable. Right now, I enjoy writing, reading, and taking care of my plants. Occasionally, I meet with a few friends from the neighborhood to chat and share a cup of tea, and honestly, I couldn't ask for a better situation. At the moment, I live alone. My children live only about a half-hour away by car, and they visit me from time to time. I receive a pension of around $5,000 a month, and since my children have their own families and responsibilities, I don't feel any financial pressure. Thanks to my careful savings over the years, I'm comfortable and don't worry much about money. However, my children are concerned about me living alone. They've suggested that I move in with them, but I've declined their offers. I understand their concern, but I value my independence and I don't want to be a burden to them. My children have also suggested that I consider moving into a retirement community. They argue that there, I would have more company, and there would always be someone to take care of my meals and laundry. While this idea sounds tempting to some, when I heard the term nursing home, I immediately rejected it. I'm still in good health and fully capable of preparing my meals and washing my clothes. Why would I want to give up my independence for a place where I would be treated like someone incapable of managing my own life? Over the years, they've raised the idea several times, living with them or in a retirement facility, but I've always turned them down. I appreciate their good intentions, but the idea of being a guest in their home, constantly inconveniencing them, just doesn't sit right with me. It would become more of a hassle for both them and me. After I resisted the idea of moving in with them, my children suggested hiring a caregiver. At first, I wasn't sure how to react. I shook my head at the suggestion, feeling that it just wasn't the right fit for me. I couldn't picture myself living with a young woman whose job was to look after me. It felt like an imposition. My daughter noticed my discomfort and laughed. She then began explaining more about this concept of assistance for the elderly, and my interest was piqued. It was something I had never really considered, so I decided to learn more about it. As my daughter continued explaining, she clarified that these were companies specializing in elderly care services that offer a more modern and flexible approach. They install cameras in your home that are linked to the mobile phones of family members. This way, if something happens to me or I'm unable to reach out, my family will be notified. As she spoke, my curiosity began to grow. This system offered a level of reassurance that I hadn't considered before. What caught my attention was the arrangement for meals. Every day, someone from the service would come to my house to bring me lunch and dinner. If I wanted breakfast as well, I could request it. The person would drop off the meals and then leave. If I needed anything else, I could simply communicate it to the company, and they would send someone to help me. In addition, every 2 days, they would come by to wash my clothes. This seemed like a convenient option that could make my life a little easier while still preserving my independence. One day, I needed something extra, so I just spoke up. If for any reason I wasn't satisfied with the staff member assigned to me, I was assured that I could notify the company, and they would send someone else. This flexibility gave me peace of mind, knowing that I had options. My daughter looked at me with a smile and asked, "So, Dad, what do you think of this kind of elderly care? You don't want to stay with either your son or me, and you're not keen on a nursing home, so this seems like the best option for you, doesn't it?" I couldn't help but laugh a little at how well she knew me. All right, I said, accepting her suggestion, though I still had some reservations. Then, a thought crossed my mind that I hadn't considered before. This new type of care must be expensive. I didn't want to burden my children financially, so I was preparing myself to ask how much it would cost. But before I could speak, my daughter quickly reassured me, saying, "It's not expensive at all. It's just $200 per month, and don't worry about it. My brother and I will cover the costs. You don't need to worry about paying for it." She patted me on the shoulder and added, "This is something we're happy to do for you." Even though she said it wouldn't be a problem, I still had concerns. How can I feel comfortable with that? I asked. There are elderly people at home, and with my children still studying and balancing their responsibilities, it seems like a lot to ask. My monthly pension is $5,000, and I felt like I could manage $200 for the service, but still, I wanted to be considerate of the money they were spending. Finally, my daughter reassured me again. "Don't worry about it. We want you to enjoy your life, and we're happy to help. You're not a burden." She said this so gently that it made me feel better, and I realized how fortunate I was to have children who truly cared about my well-being. I must admit, after seeing how well it worked, I became fond of this new type of elderly care. It allows me to continue living in my own home while receiving the help I need. Most importantly, it gives me the freedom to have more time for myself, to relax, read, and take care of my hobbies without feeling overwhelmed. The system makes me feel secure, and I'm sincerely grateful for its effectiveness. It's a great blessing that allows me to truly enjoy my old age, with just the right balance of independence and assistance.
3. Aunt Lou.
My name is Linda, and I'm 67 years old. After years of living in my children's homes, I have finally found a form of elderly care that truly suits me. When I was younger, I worked as a supervisor at a state-owned garment factory, and now that I'm retired, I receive a monthly pension of around $3,500. I have a son and a daughter. After my son graduated from college, he decided to stay in the city to build his career. He now lives in his own house with his wife and child. My daughter lives in a more distant city, but her situation is also quite good. A couple of years ago, she had her second child. When I first retired, I didn't want to be a burden to anyone. I longed to enjoy my retirement in peace and comfort, at home, by myself. However, everything changed last year when my husband, who was 68 at the time, suffered a severe stroke and passed away unexpectedly. The loss of my husband was an enormous blow to me. For a long time, I could barely function. Life can be so fragile, and sometimes we don't realize how quickly everything can change. When he passed, I felt incredibly alone. His presence was in every corner of the house, and I couldn't escape the memories. I found myself tossing and turning, unable to sleep for nights on end. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. My children were very understanding of my grief. My daughter, especially, was very concerned about my well-being and called me often. She invited me to come stay with her for a while. My son also called and asked me to come stay with his family. At the time, I felt a little comforted. In our culture, it's very common for the elderly to live with their children, and it's considered the tradition to care for parents at home. But the reality was that my daughter lived too far away, so I decided to visit my son's house for a while. However, after just under 2 weeks at my son's home, I realized that it wasn't the ideal solution I had imagined. My son has 2 young children, a grandson and a granddaughter. I had helped take care of my grandson when he was a toddler, but because of my health issues and my responsibilities at home, I had to return to care for my elderly mother. That's when my daughter-in-law had to leave her job to take care of the children. When my granddaughter was born, my daughter-in-law asked me to help out with her, but I was already feeling overwhelmed. My husband had been unwell for a long time, and I didn't want to take on the added responsibility of helping with the newborn again. I needed time to heal and recharge myself. I had already cared for my grandson, and I knew that caring for another baby would be too much. That's when I politely declined the offer to help, and perhaps that's when my daughter-in-law's attitude toward me began to shift. Her behavior over the years became more distant. While I didn't take offense, I couldn't help but notice the change in our relationship. I think my decision to not take on the full-time caregiving role for my grandchildren may have created some tension between us. Despite all the love and care I had given to my son's family, I realized that sometimes we can't meet all the expectations others have of us, especially when it comes to the responsibilities of caregiving. Now that my grandson and granddaughter have grown up, I thought things would be different when I returned to my son's house. However, when I got there, I quickly realized that I had underestimated the situation. My daughter-in-law made subtle remarks about how, in the past, I hadn't been as helpful with the kids, and now, despite my age, she didn't think I should be coming back into their home. While she never directly said it, that's certainly what I felt beneath her words. Since I arrived, things quickly shifted in a way I hadn't expected. My daughter-in-law barely cooked, and meal preparation and washing dishes became my responsibility. I never expected this kind of role reversal. One evening, while my granddaughter was eating, she asked me, "Grandma, why are you cooking like this?" Before I could respond, my daughter-in-law stormed out of the kitchen, taking the kids with her, and slammed the door behind her. The tension in the air was palpable. I felt out of place, like I wasn't welcome. The atmosphere in my son's house became increasingly uncomfortable for me. Every day felt like a new struggle. I couldn't enjoy my retirement the way I had hoped. Instead, I had fallen back into the role of a caregiver, one I didn't ask for. My daughter-in-law never once offered me a smile. Her attitude was full of disdain, and even when I tried to help, she seemed irritated. To make matters worse, she and my son would argue almost daily, making the home feel tense and strained. Even the children had grown quiet, not speaking much, and there was a lack of warmth in the house. After less than 2 weeks, I made the difficult decision to pack my things and ask my son to take me home. It was clear that I wasn't going to find peace or joy living there. I didn't want to be a source of conflict, nor did I want to be part of an environment that felt so uncomfortable. I had hoped for a peaceful visit, but it wasn't working out. Returning to my hometown, I felt a deep sense of relief. Soon after, my daughter called and invited me to stay with her for a while. But, with the experience of living at my son's house still fresh in my mind, I politely declined. I didn't want to place expectations on my daughter that could turn into disappointments. The truth was, I had helped raise my son's children, but my daughter's grandchildren had never been under my care. They were raised by their paternal grandmother, and I knew that my daughter's home was small, too small for me to live there comfortably. Her apartment only had 2 rooms, and if I were to stay there, I'd probably have nowhere to sleep. From all of this, I've learned an important lesson about aging. Relying on my children for care in my old age isn't as simple as I had once thought. It's complicated, and I can't always count on them to provide the kind of support I need. I've come to appreciate the importance of finding my way, living independently, and making decisions that work best for me. After my experience at my son's house, I came to truly understand the meaning behind that old saying. A parent's house is always the children's home, but the house never truly becomes the parent's home. Since returning to my office, I've found that my hopes for relying on either my son or my daughter for support have dwindled. The more expectations I placed on them, the more disappointment seemed inevitable. I realized that I couldn't keep hoping for things to change in the way I envisioned. Some of my neighbors, who had observed my struggles, suggested that I shouldn't rely entirely on my children at my age. They recommended that I explore finding a partner, someone with whom I could share my life. At first, I was resistant to the idea. I wasn't eager to start a new relationship, especially at this stage in my life. But the thought of companionship was comforting, so I decided to give it a try. Thanks to a friend's recommendation, I met Lao Lu, a man a couple of years older than me. He was also retired and received a pension of around $300 a month, which was a little more than mine. At first, I wasn't sure what to expect, but I didn't want to close myself off to new possibilities. Lao Lu and I began to meet occasionally for walks around the local morning market, where we would buy fresh produce and chat. Over more than 2 months, we both agreed that it seemed like a good connection. Lao invited me to spend more time with him at his house, and he suggested that I could rent out my own house and make some extra income. He even told me that he would be open to the idea of us living together and that I could use the rental income to help cover our costs. At first, I considered the idea. It wasn't a bad proposition, and the thought of having someone around again wasn't entirely unappealing. But after only a month of living together, I quickly realized that things weren't as ideal as I had hoped. Before I had even made arrangements to rent out my house, I found myself packing up and moving again. Lao Lu had promised that once we moved in together, he would take care of all the expenses, do the grocery shopping, and share the cooking. We agreed that we would split the costs of running the household, but the reality was far different. Not only did he not stick to his promises, but his lack of attention to household chores and the messiness of his home made me uneasy. I found myself constantly picking up after him, and I didn't like the feeling of being responsible for everything. One day, while we were at a shopping mall, I spotted a second-hand gold ring that caught my eye. It was a modest piece, priced at less than $30, and I thought it would make a lovely memento of our time together. I asked Lao Lu if he would buy it for me, as a simple but meaningful gift. To my surprise, he immediately refused. He told me that at our age, it wasn't appropriate to buy such things and that we should spend our money more wisely. His suggestion? Instead of a ring, we could buy some golden pork ribs to cook for dinner. I didn't let his objections stop me. Since I wanted the ring, I took out my card and bought it myself. Lao Lu's refusal, along with the way he had handled our living arrangement, made me question whether this relationship was truly the right fit for me. I wasn't looking for someone to restrict my choices or tell me how to spend my money. I simply wanted a partner who could offer me companionship, not someone who made me feel like I was compromising my independence yet again. Lao Lu had told me from the beginning that, once we started living together, he would contribute his pension to help cover our expenses. However, when I asked him for the money after the first month, he simply explained that he had already paid for the household expenses and intended to save the rest for himself. While this wasn't exactly what we had discussed, I could accept that he wanted to keep some of his money for personal use. What I couldn't tolerate, however, was his parasitic behavior. When we first moved in together, we agreed to divide the household chores. For the first week, things went smoothly. But over time, Lao Lu's true nature began to show. During the day, he would often disappear to play cards with his friends, and when he came home, he'd look around for food, complaining that nothing had been prepared. I reminded him several times that we had agreed to share the tasks. He was supposed to buy the vegetables while I handled the cooking, but instead of fulfilling his part, he'd lie down on the sofa and do nothing. When I finished cooking and set the table, he would always find something to criticize. Sometimes it was the food being too salty, other times it was a minor detail about the taste. I realized then that he was a typical chauvinist. When I pointed out his lack of effort around the house, he responded by reminding me that he was covering my expenses and expected me to take care of the household chores. I've never been one to tolerate disrespect, especially when it comes to my independence. So, after several weeks of putting up with his behavior, I packed my things and moved out. I didn't need to continue living with someone who made me feel like I was being taken advantage of. Fortunately, I still had my own home, and my pension was enough to support me. I didn't need Lao Lu's help, and I certainly didn't need to endure his whims. Returning to my independent life was liberating. At first, I thought living alone might feel isolating, but soon I realized that I needed my space. The quiet of my home was comforting, although there were moments, especially at night when it felt too empty. The silence was deafening, and the memories of my late husband lingered in every corner. It wasn't the kind of solitude I had hoped for, but I soon realized that I couldn't let loneliness rule my life. It was during this period of reflection that a friend invited me to attend a wedding with her. During the celebration, she mentioned that she was living in a hotel apartment and seemed happy with the arrangement. She said the place was practical, comfortable, and affordable. I was intrigued, so after the wedding, she took me to visit her apartment. The moment I stepped inside, I was captivated by the warm, cozy atmosphere of the studio apartment. It was a space designed with older adults in mind, offering all the comforts of home, without the burdens of housekeeping or cooking. The most appealing part of the hotel apartment was the all-inclusive service. The rent covered all meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so there was no need to cook. Staff came in daily to clean, and the apartment was just the right size for someone living alone. It was everything I had been looking for. These types of accommodations are becoming increasingly popular, especially in larger cities, and I realized this was the solution I had been searching for. It offered the independence I craved, without the isolation of living alone in a big house. I didn't have to rely on anyone else, yet I was still part of a community. After spending a few more weeks thinking about it, I decided to move into one of these hotel apartments. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. It was the right choice for me. I finally found a lifestyle that suited my needs: independence, comfort, and a sense of belonging. This experience taught me that sometimes we need to step outside of our expectations and embrace a new way of living, one that allows us to take control of our happiness. The cost of the hotel apartment is comparable to what one might pay for a nursing home, but the quality of life it offers is incomparable. The meals are exquisite, and the freedom to come and go without restrictions is unmatched. After my visit, I decided that this was the lifestyle I had been searching for. Upon returning home, I contacted a real estate agency to put my house back on the market. I did the math. The rent I could earn from the house, plus my monthly pension of around $3,000, would cover the cost of living in the hotel apartment. When I called my children to inform them of my decision, they were initially concerned. They felt that the cost of the hotel was too expensive. But I explained to them that after working hard my entire life, I wanted to enjoy my golden years on my terms. I didn't want to settle for a life I wasn't happy with just to save a little money. By combining my savings with the small amount my children were able to contribute, I could live comfortably and peacefully each month in the hotel apartment. After all the years of effort and sacrifice, I felt it was finally time to focus on myself. Money, as I've come to understand, isn't something we take with us when we leave this world. It's not meant to rule over us or limit our happiness. I don't want to be a prisoner to money, and as long as I can pay for the necessities, eat, drink, and live comfortably, I am happy. I realize that any lifestyle that gives me the freedom and joy I deserve is the best option for me. The hotel I decided to move into charges around $300 a month, which, admittedly, is a bit more than I initially expected to pay. But when I weigh that against the comfort and freedom it offers, it feels like a justified expense. This is the life I want to lead. Free, independent, and without the constraints of traditional senior living options. However, I know that this type of housing isn't for everyone. The hotel only accepts elderly residents who can take care of themselves and are under the age of 75. That's something I'm aware of, and I wonder what will happen when I eventually reach that age. But that's a worry for another time. For now, I am in perfect health, and each day is a gift. I'm living the way I've always wanted to, and I plan to enjoy it for as long as I can. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Linda's story and the experiences of others who are navigating the challenges of aging and independence. What have you learned from their journeys so far? Whether it's the importance of maintaining your independence, the power of building a support system, or the value of making decisions that align with your happiness, there's something we can all take away from these stories. I'd love to hear what you found most impactful. What's one thing you've learned today that you will bring into your own life and practice moving forward? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Call to action. If you like this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more stories and insights on living well as we age. Your support means the world to me. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.